Hello guys, and welcome to yet another React tutorial from Trust. In today's we're going to build a weather app, and this is not just any regular weather app you've seen on YouTube. This is actually different because we're going to take error handling to the next level. So this is a simple weather app, and I'm just going to have an empty field here in my input field, and I'm going to press enter and let's see what happens. So we're able to detect that the input is empty, and we have a way of intelligently handling the error message, right? So that's the first thing. All right, so let me go ahead and actually search for something that makes sense, something that is intelligent. So I'll search for Lagos, which is a city in Nigeria. And as you can see, first off, we had a loading state. So the period of time where the data is being fetched from the API, right? We had that loading text there before we then got the information, and we're able to intelligently display the information, right? So I can search for, let's search for London, for example. So London, and as you can see, we get London. Now what I want to do is I want to turn off my data. So I'm going to disconnect my internet from my computer, and I'm going to try to run a search. So let's see what happens when I do that. So I'm going to search for Abuja, for example, and I'll hit enter. And as you can see here, we get a different kind of error message. Here it says failed to fetch. So it's now left for you to decide to check what's going on. Oh, is there something wrong with my internet or something like that? But also during the course of the tutorial, you'll see here that you can also customize your error message depending on what went wrong. So I just made mine simple by saying failed to fetch. Great. So that's what we're going to build in this project, right? So just give me a minute to connect back, okay, so that I can all right, great. So I'm connected. Just to be sure, I'll hit enter here, and you see here that we're still able to fetch the temperature. Great. Now this is one of the projects that I build in my React mini project course, right? So if you go to my website xenotrustacademy.com, you will see that I have a couple of courses, right? JavaScript, HTML, front-end related generally. And there's this ReactJS mini project course that I recently published, maybe like a week or two ago. I'm currently working on my ReactJS beginner to advanced course. And if you want to get notified when I release the course, you can just get the early bird discount here, and I'll send you a discount of $10 or less when I release the course. Meanwhile, you can check out my ReactJS mini course. All right, without wasting much of your time, let's get started with our project. All right, so let's get started. So in our components folder, we're going to create another folder, and we're going to call it weather, like so. And then inside of that, we're going to create two files, weather.js and weather.css. SCSS. Great. All right, now let's convert this to a component, RAFCE to the rescue, and I'll just say weather. Save that, and don't forget to import the CSS file, like so. Great. So we're done with that. Then in our app.js, I'm going to bring in the component. So I'll say weather, and I'll import it, auto import it, and then I'll save. And let's just see. So from hello world, we should have this tiny weather. Yeah. So that's about it for that. I'll close this, and we can start working on the weather itself. Great. So I'm going to change this section to this div to a section. Let's give it a class name of, so I'll just do 100% of the viewport height and center all. Okay, get rid of this weather, and inside of this, let's have a container, and we're going to have a modifier class of weather and another modifier class of our utility class flex center. Tap that, and so the first thing we have inside of this is the weather app, the text h1. So I'm going to say h1 tab and weather app, and Then we're going to have the date. So I'll just add a paragraph and I'll just add some dates. So 2021 /12 /24. You know what, let me make it 2020 so that I will not forget about it, and then I'll have to come back to make sure that the date is pulled from JavaScript. Okay, so next we have this form. So I'll come down here and I will do a div with a class of my modifier class form control, and I'll do another class of margin top and bottom of 2rem, and like so. I think I can close this guy so that I have space. Then we have an input inside of that, so I'll just say input type of text, and the placeholder is gonna say search by city name, or search city name rather, city name. I think that's about it for now. That's about it. Then we are gonna have this results tab next. Sorry, let me close this. So we're gonna have this result tab next. So I'm gonna come below this form control, and I'll have a div with a class of results. So results, and I'll give it a modifier class of, first off, let me make some card. So it's going to be like a card, and I'll add some margin around it. So this is going to be margin on the top and bottom of 2rem. Tap that, and for the result, basically what we have is we first have this text, and that's going to be h2. So I'll just do h2, and for now I'll just say Abuja. I'll just exactly what is there, Abuja. Then we're going to have an image, img. I don't actually have any image I can use specifically. I mean this clouds image. So for now I'll just leave it empty, or I'll just add some text here. I'll say clouds. Okay, that's the alt text. Then we have this temperature, blah blah blah. There's something though. This image is in a div with a class of icon. So let me just do that. Then I'll move the image upwards into it. Great. Okay, so next we're going to have a group, a number of paragraphs. So the first one, P, is going to say temp, and that's going to so for temperature I'll just say 23, and I'll just, this degree Celsius, I'll just copy it. I have it here, so I'll just copy it, degrees C. So I'll just say 23 degrees C like that, and I'll duplicate this and change this to weather, which is clouds, weather, and I'll just write clouds. Now all of this will be gotten dynamically, but for now let's just write it out for the styling. So here I'll say temperature range, and I'll just set it to 23 degrees C. Oh shit, I need to copy it again, so I'll copy it, 23 degrees C / 24 degrees C, like so, and that's it. Yeah, that's it for as far as the markup is concerned. So I'll go ahead and save. The weather app has like a lot of logic, so let me just see what we have. So this is what we have so far. Okay, I think maybe there's something. Let me see. Center all, flex center. Okay, I think something is wrong somewhere. Yeah, I see what is wrong. So we have this class of container and flex center. Ideally, what I should have done is I should have another div with a class of weather app. Okay, so I'll tab that weather app, right? And I'm even going to give it another class of text light. So text hyphen light, and this div is going to surround all the content you see here. So but prior to this div, we have section and one div. So let me just tab it so that we don't get confused. So one section and one div. I'm going to cut this guy, Ctrl X, and I'll come here. So this is the one section closing, one div closing, and then I'll just wrap it here and save. All of this thing you see here would align itself and be straight. Okay, I hope it's not too confusing. I hope you can. Anyway, the code is going to be available to you, so you can just look at the code, download the code, and look at the code. So in the next one, we're going to add some styling and make it look a little bit better than what it is now. All right. So now let's add CSS. We have like quite a number of CSS to add, custom CSS. So let's just be very fast about it. So for the section, right, tion, I'm going to add this gradient, this gradient background, and I already have the gradient I created. So I'll just paste that in, and I use that gradient tool, okay, the one we talked about in one of the previous projects. Anyway, if you don't know how to use the tool, you can just copy what you see here. All right, then I'll go to .weather, and that is this guy you see here. So after the section, we have the class name, and it has a weather class. Okay, I'll give it a width of 100%. Then I'll set a max width of 350 pixels, so 350 px. Okay, let's give it a height of 80% of the viewport height, so 80 VH. Then very importantly, we're going to set a background, and I want to use an image. So I'll say URL, I'll go up, then I'll enter the assets folder, and from there I'll use the weatherbg.png like so. Then what else? I'll set the background size, so background size to cover. Okay, let's set the border radius of this section to 10 pixels, 10 px. Then we're going to set the overflow to hidden. Then lastly, I'll set the position to relative. Ctrl Z, position relative, like so. Let me save that and see what I've even done so far. Okay, yeah, so this is what we have, and this is not bad. Then on this image, I'm going to set like a transparent dark cover kind of. So what I'm going to do is I'll come and say .weather, and I'll give it a pseudo element of before, like so. Let's set the content to an empty string first. Then we're going to say position to absolute. Okay, I think at this point I can close this guy and have my space. So position absolute, I'll say that from the left I want it to be 0. Same for the top, so top. Then I want it to have a width of 100%. Same for the height. Okay, then I want it to have a background, so it's the background that is very important. Background of RGBA, and that's going to be 000 and 0.3. So just a dark shadow on it. Then I'll set the Z index to 0. So 0. Let's go ahead and save that. And see there's this darker shade on the image. That's just basically what I wanted to achieve. Then But the problem now is that that shade is on top of everything you see. So this weather app, for example, you can't click this input because this shade, this pseudo element is on top. So what that means is that I will get the next div, which is the dot weather app, weather hyphen app, and I'll set the z index to just something big. So for example 999. Just save that, and suddenly you see you can access the everything. Okay, great. Now let's set some styles that will just, so I'll say dot weather app, and I'm going to target all the elements inside like this. Then I'll add a comma. Then I'll also target the results, because the styles I want it to apply to the both of them. Okay, then I'll open it up like this. Basically I just want to set the color to white, FFF. Then I'll set this. Is there any need? No need for the Z index. Color to white is fine. So you see everything is set. Great. You see this results bar? I'll then give it, so dot results, I'll then give it its own background color. So background, I'll set the background. I have the color here that I use, light blue, RGBA based light blue color. So this is it. Then I'll save. Good. Now there's another class that I've not used, but I'll use it later. Is the error class. This error class, I'll just set the background to this RGB based red color. So I'll just paste that in. I'll use it much later. Let me set some padding on the error class of 1 rem and save. As far as the styling is concerned, we are done. I think we are done. So in the next one now, we're going to handle the logic for the project, which is actually the heavy part of this project, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, welcome back, guys. Now in this one, we are going to handle the logic part of our weather app. So before we actually get into it, right, what I need you to do is to just give you a background. I want to give you a background of the Open Weather Map API. So if you search for Open Weather Map API, you get this result. The first result you get, you can click on it and it will bring you to this page. Okay, their API page. Now to use the Open Weather Map API, you need an API key. So you actually need to register and get an API key. I'm already registered, so if I click sign in, I'll sign in and I have my API key. But for you, you need to register. If you've never used it before, you don't have an API key, you register and they'll give you an API key. And I think the API key takes a couple of hours before it's functional. Okay, and then it also has this limit, like it's not unlimited, right? Maybe after a certain number of API calls, your API key may not function as normal. All right, now to read the documentation to use this API, this first one is sufficient for you. Current weather data. So if you click on API docs, it will bring you to this page. Right now there's a lot of information on the page, as you can see, but what we're interested in is how to use the API. So if you look at the first few API links here, you see we have this api.openweathermap.org/data, and then we have some queries. So whether q is equals to city name, app id is equals to api.key, and all of that. If you scroll down, you will see some of, just go ahead, just play around with the documentation and read some of these things. So you see we have units, optional, we have so you see for this unit now we have although it's optional, we have things like standard, metric, imperial and stuff like that, language, different like parameters that we can use when we are using the API. So we're going to see practically now how this API can be used, okay, in React. So let me go ahead and minimize this and let's get to work. So I'll come to my JS file, weather.js file, and let's import use state from React. So I'll come here and I'll just change this to use state. So use state, and we're going to create quite a number of states for this project. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and create all the states I need first, then we'll then start seeing what they do. So I'll say use state like so. Come on, help me, React. Yeah, and this first one I'm going to call it input like so, and let's capitalize it. And for initially it's going to be an empty string, the initial state. So from there, let's create the other ones. I'll call this next one weather. So weather, imput. So let me capitalize it. Okay, then initially it's going to be an empty object like this. Then let's create another state. We're going to call this one is loading. So I'll say is loading, and then I'll set is loading here, capitalize, and initially I'll set is loading to false. So that's false. Great. Then the next state I'm going to set is my error state. There are quite a number of states, but you see how everything works and everything fits together. So error. So here I'll capitalize this, and initially error state is going to be set to true. Come on, like so. And the last state is going to be error message. So I'll just say error MSG for short, and initially this is going to be an empty string like so. Great. So these are the 1 2 3 4 5 initial states we're going to use for the project. Good. Now we need to have the API links. So I'm going to create an object. I'll call it API, and I'll set it to be, of course it's an object, it's going to have two properties. The first is going to be my URL. So URL, no, I want it to just be small letter, so URL, and I'm just going to paste in the URL. Okay, in fact I'm not going to paste it. Let me just go to the site and copy it. So it's just going to be up to this 2.5 /. So but it's going to have HTTP in front of it, so I'll just copy it and let me go back. So here I'll just use my hand to write the HTTP and / and then I'll just paste it. So API, no, it's not api.openweather. I'll just say openweathermap.org. Oh, sorry, that was a mistake. That was for something else. So api.openweathermap.org / data / 2.5 /. Then we're going to now have the key. So the API key I told you about. So if you don't have your API key, register with the OpenWeatherMap site and you get your API key. Okay, but for me I have my API key, so I'll just use my own. I'll copy it and I'll paste it here like that. Okay, so that's my own API URL and API key. Simple. Great. Now you see this input here is from this input that we're going to get whatever the user types in, the data the user types in, and use it to query this OpenWeatherMap API. So first off, let's find a way to get the input. That's why we created this state of input. Okay, so you know what I gotta do? I gotta come here just below this guy here, and I'll create an arrow function. This arrow function basically is just going to help me get the input like so. Okay, and it's going to have an e parameter. So let's open that up. You know what, I'll just say set input, and set input is going to be set to event.target.value. Now you may be thinking that this doesn't actually make sense because we don't even know where this is coming from. Well, it has to come from this our input here. Where is the input? Okay, yeah, so you see this input here, right? I'll come here and I will add an onChange prop here. So onChange, what do I want to do? I will call that get input function I just created. So sorry, get input like so. That's not all though. I will set the value of this input to whatever the input is. Okay, that's the input state. Then lastly, I'll say that when I am focused on this input and I press a key, so I'll say on key press. So where is it? On key press. So it's already giving us the suggestion. I'm going to call a function, and basically what do I want this function to do? I want the function to get the weather data of whatever the user typed in here. So I'll say get weather data. That's it. Okay, great. So I'll come here, let me copy this guy, and let's go ahead and get the weather data. So let's just come below this get input here. I'll create another arrow function that will simply get the weather data. Okay, I hope it's clear. Now this one too is also going to have an event parameter, and you see why we are giving it an event parameter. So basically when a user presses like a key, we want to be able to do something inside of this get weather data. So you know what, I'm going to start off with an if statement, because it's not just any key that the user presses that I want to be able to run this function to get weather data. It's a specific key. So I'll say that if the user presses a key, so I'll say if event.key, and I'm particularly interested in when the user presses enter. So if the user presses enter, then I want to do something, right? But what if the user presses enter when this guy is empty? So let me go to, I think I can close this other part here for now. I think I can close it. Okay, so what if the user, like when this guy is empty, the user presses when the input field is empty, the user now press enter. What happens? So if I press enter, see what happens. It tells me immediately that the inputs cannot be empty. So that's part of the error handling. You know, we created an error state. Great. So I'll say that if the user presses enter key, if event.key is equal to enter, but, so I'll say and the input is equal to an empty string. What do I want to do? Well, I'm going to set an error message. So if you remember, we created this error message here. So I'll say I want to set this error message, even though we've not used it yet, but we're going to use it. I'll set the error message to, basically inputs cannot be empty. Inputs cannot be empty. Simple. Okay, so that's like an error, right? So I would also set the error. So there are two, there is set error message and there is set error. So I'll set the error to be equal to true. Okay, in case maybe it was false somewhere along the line, if somehow the user presses enter in an empty input field, I'll set the error back to true. So now that we've been able to set an error message, how are we going to display that error message inside of this form? That's a very important question. So okay, we're already 12 minutes in. Okay, at 15 minutes I'll break the video. Okay, So now to answer that question of how we will display the error message, we need to go back to our JSX and let's see where exactly are we going to slot that in. So after this input here, before the results, we're going to have an expression here. This expression now, we'll say that if there's some kind of error, so if error is equal to true, then we want to do something. We're using ternary operator. So if error is equal to true, let me open a bracket, then else I'll open another bracket. Okay, so now this first bracket, what do we want to do? If error is equal to true, I want to display an error message. So I'll just put a paragraph here first, and inside that paragraph, sorry, it needs to be curly braces, I'll just display my error message like so. Okay, so now what if there's no error, everything works fine? That's the condition where I will now display this result. So you see this div with a class of results. Let me see where it ends. It ends here. This div with a class of result, I'll cut it and I'll now slot it inside this else block of my ternary operator. So basically I'm saying that if there is some kind of error, display the error message. If there is no error, then display the results. That's basically what I just said here. So that's it. So let's continue. Right now we'll come inside our get weather data. We're not done, but since we're already at 14 minutes, I'll break the video here, and in the next one we're going to continue seeing how we can get our weather data. Okay, all right, so let's continue on our project. So we are in this get weather data function. So I'm going to come down and let's add another if statement. I'll just open that up quickly. Now I'll say if event.key is equal to enter, and if the input is not equal to an empty string. Okay, in other words, something is inside of this input. What do I want to do? It's at this point that I want to now execute my fetch request. So I'll say fetch, and here just we're going to add a backtick because we're going to need to construct the fetch URL. So the first thing we want to do is we want to access this API URL. This is where it all starts. So here I would add my dollar and curly braces, and I'll say API.url. That's where it starts. Then we're going to add the other parameters. So I'll say weather, and building this URL, I actually got the information can be gotten from the Open Weather Map API documentation. Okay, but I'm just going to focus on build it. All right, I'll say weather, and then I'll say query q is equal to, so let's add our $sign one more time, and we're going to get the input. So the query is going to be whatever the user types in the input state. Okay, then we're going to set the unit. So I'll go ahead and say and units, and I'll set it to be equal to metrics. Still part of our documentation. Then lastly, I'll set the app ID. So I'll say and app ID. It has to be capital letter according to the documentation. I'll set that to be equal to API.key. And by API.key, I'm referring to this API key here. Okay, so this is how we construct our URL. Now let me just take a second look at it to make sure that nothing is wrong. So we start with the API URL, weather, and then the query is going to be equal to the inputs, whatever the user types into the inputs, and unit is going to be set to metrics, and then app ID is going to be set to our API.key. So I think everything is okay, but of course we're going to find out when we execute the operation. So I'll come to the next line and I'll say .then. That's because when you execute a fetch request, you expect a promise which you catch with the .then block. So I'll say .then. Inside this .then, let me open that up with an arrow function like this. So I'm expecting some kind of response, which I'll just save as res. Okay. Now, if I get that response, I'm going to return. So that should be return. So I'll return res.json like so. Okay. Now I'm getting the response. The next thing I want to do is I want to catch the data. So I'll say .then like so, and here I'll put my data and use my arrow function to access it. So basically, what I'm just going to do here is I'm just going to do a simple console.log of the data. Okay, now I hope it's clear, but I'll just quickly go through it. So what am I doing here? I say that if the user presses enter after they've typed something inside this input field, in other words, the input field is not empty, then I executed the fetch operation, and this is the fetch URL that were constructed. Then I got a response, saved it in response.json, which enabled me to get the data, and then I did the console.log of that data. Simple as that. So let me go ahead and save this, and I think at this point we can try it out. So I'll open this up and do a Ctrl+Shift-I. I'm not interested in the data showing on this app. I'm just interested in the data showing up on my console. That's what I'm interested in. Okay, so I'll just come here and I'll say Abuja and I'll hit enter. And I don't think it's actually worked. So let me hit enter again. Okay, so for some reason my data is not fetching. So no problem, I'm going to look through the code and let's see what's going on. Oops, so I just realized that my internet connection went off temporarily. So but it's back on now, so I think if I refresh the page I should be fine. So you know what, it's part of what we're going to learn in this particular project. We're going to learn how to handle errors, right? We didn't talk much about errors in the last fetch project we did. Anyway, we're going to handle that. So let me come here and let me do Ctrl+Shift-I again, and let me try and just do something here. So I'll come here and I'll just do Abuja and I'll hit enter. Great. So we have this data that we were successfully able to fetch, and it contains the data for this particular location, the weather data for this particular location. Okay, great. So I'll just close this. So at least we know that our code, at least this part of our code, is running well. All right, so let me get rid of there's something I want to get rid of. I can't remember. Okay, I think it's this line here. All right, so now let's continue. So now we're able to get the data and we're able to log the data to the console. So what I want to do now is I want to be able to display that data in the project. Okay, so I'll come here inside of this data where we got the data and we logged it to the console. I'm going to now set the weather. And when I say set weather, what am I talking about? I'm talking about these states. I created this weather state, so it has a setter function of set weather, and we set it to an empty object. That object that data we got from the weather map API, it's also an object. So that's why we can, after we've gotten the data, we can then set weather to this data we've just gotten. So if I set the weather to data, in other words, if I'm able to successfully fetch the data and I set weather to data, I also want to clear the input. So I'll say set input to an empty string, so it will clear the input field. Yeah, I think that's about it. So now let me come here and let's begin to slot in the information we have inside of this place, inside of this result. Okay, so here we'll start from this h2. So instead of Abuja, we're going to, let me see, use curly braces. So I'm going to say weather dot name, that's the first one. Then I'll add a comma here, and let's do another one. I'll say weather, I want to get the country now, so I'll say weather, sorry, this should be weather dot sys. This is how the information comes from the API, so it's under sys and country dot country, like so. Then we now have so this image, we're going to do this image like last because it's kind of different, it's not exactly the same, so we're going to do it last. So but for the temperature, so for this temperature here, anyway, let me get rid of it. So I'll leave the text temp, I'll just get rid of this 23. Now this temperature, I will do I'll do a math.round on it. Okay, so I'll say math.round before I now get the temperature. So for the temperature, I'll say weather, okay, weather dot mean dot temp. Don't worry, I would actually go inside of the data in the console.log and show you all of these things, okay, if it's not very clear at this point. Then for the weather itself, I'll just grab this math.round to save time, copy that, paste that here, and this one is going to be, so this one is going to be weather and 0, okay, so it's like an array number. So weather 0.mean, that's going to represent the weather. Then the temperature range, so let me just grab the, okay, I've already copied it, so I can just paste that in here. So for the temperature range, right, the first one is going to be weather.main dot temperature underscore mean. Okay, so because it's a temperature range, then I'm going to delete this, paste that in again, and then this is going to be temperature underscore max. Okay, so that's about it. Now the what's it called, the image. So if you come here, you see that we have this image. Oh, okay, I need to search for something, so let me search Abuja. So you see we have this image of clouds, right? This image, we're going to use a separate URL to actually get this image. So what I'm going to do is, let me grab the image URL. So I'll just grab it, I have it right here, so I'll copy it and then I'll just paste it somewhere up top, just under this. I can just paste it under here actually, so I'll just paste it in. So I call it icon URL, and this is how you access it. So open weathermap.org/email/w, and then we're going to attach some other things to it. Okay, so for that image, let's scroll down, and okay, yeah, so this is the image. So the source is where we're going to now have our curly braces. So for that source, I'm going to say icon URL, which is what I just created up top, and then plus I'll now say weather dot weather, then square bracket 0, then I'll now say dot icon. Okay, then I'll now add it to, I'll concatenate it to the png, so I'll say dot png. Okay, then that's it basically. Then for the alt, I can set the alt to this weather, so I can just grab this weather here. I'll say, wait, I think there's something wrong with this weather does not need a math.round though. This math.round, we don't need it here, so because it's not the, so I'm just going to get rid of that. So for the weather itself, it's just going to be weather.weather. So this will be, there'll be a dot weather here, so weather.weather 0.main and stuff. Yeah, so that's it. So for the alt text of that image, I'll use this guy. Instead of saying clouds, I'll just use this guy here. I'll delete that and I'll paste that in. Yeah. Also, I think I don't need 2 curly braces. I'll delete one of the curly braces like so. Delete this one. Great. So now at this point, I think I can save and expect that I'll be able to display the data on the page. I think. So let me save that first. Hopefully there's no error. Good. So now let's look at this stuff and make sure we can display it. So when we get this data, remember we set error to true somewhere. So you see here we set error to true. So when we get this data, one of the things we want to do is we want to set error to false. Okay, it's when we set error to false that we'll now be able to display the what's it called? We'll now be able to display the data. So let me save that and let's search for something. So here I'll just search for Abuja and I'll hit enter. Great. So you see we have Abuja and the information. That's because we've set error to false here. Now what are we going to do next? Let's create a loading state so that when you hit enter, if maybe your internet is slow, you will be able to have display that loading word before you're able to get the data and display the data. So we're going to do that in the next video. All right, now so we were talking about setting the loading state, and remember we already have a state const is loading. This is loading state, we already set it. So what I'm going to do is I'll just come down, where am I going to set it? Just below this guy here. I'll add another curly braces and I'll say that if it's loading is equal to true, then I want to display, I'll just put a h3 here. This h3 will say loading. So you can put a spinner if you like. Okay, you just need to get the image of the spinner and replace it with this loading, but for now just use loading. So I'll say if it's loading is true, then display is loading. So I'll then scroll up. Okay, let's scroll up. So when we call this get weather data function, immediately we call this get weather data function, I want to set its loading to true. Okay, so from this if statement, if we're able to begin the process of fetching the data, so I'll come here, I'll say first of all set its loading to true. So set its loading to true. Okay, then at the end of when you've gotten the data, that's in this second dot then block, when you've gotten the data, after you've set error to false, you also want to set is loading back to false. Okay, so let's just save it and just test it step by step and see what we're able to achieve. So I'll come here, I'll search for Abuja. Oh, sorry, let me search for something else. So London, I'll hit enter, and you see we have the loading here. But while the loading displayed, we still had this guy, this data, displaying here. Okay, so if you look very well, where does this data display? In this block here where it says if error is equal to true, display this error message, else display the data, what's it called, the results. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to set error to true. So let's come here. So just before we begin to fetch the data, we've set its loading to true. So I'll come here also and set error to true. Okay, and it's only when we've been able to successfully fetch and get our data here that we'll now set error back to false. So up here I'll set error to true. When we've gotten the data, we'll set error back to false. Okay, so let me save that and let's try something else. So Lagos, enter. So you see, when you click enter, this message disappears. I'm sorry, this box disappears and you see just the loading. Let's do London again. You see that? Great. So I think that's sorted out. Now let's handle error. So supposing like what happened when my internet suddenly went out and I just didn't know what was happening. That's an error. We need to be able to catch that kind of error and do something with it. Okay, so let's look at this process again. So when you do this fetch here, for example, if you maybe made a mistake with your fetch URL, for example, if I maybe said something like let me just add a letter here like W and I save. Of course, we're not going to be able to fetch. So if I come here and say Abuja and I hit enter, you see we have an error. The whole application crashes. But ideally what you want is that you want to be able to catch that error and do something with it. So permit me to just delete this W and save it so that we can have something reasonable on the screen, which is what we have now. Great. So let's look at the process again so that we can know where we want to catch the error. So when you execute the fetch operation, you're supposed to get a response. That's in this dot then, right? So I say dot then, and then when I get the response, I return response.json, right? So before you get this response, I'm going to run a check here. I'll say that if, so let me open this up. Now I'll say if response dot okay, in other words, if the response is okay, but I'm not interested in if the response is okay. I'm interested in if something is wrong and the response is bad, like maybe the user does not have internet or we made a typographical error. So I'll say if the response is not okay, so I'll add this exclamation mark here, then I'm going to throw an error. So let's throw an error, let's throw error, and inside of this error I'm going to specify the error message. So I'll say failed to fetch data. Okay, now I've thrown the error here. What that means is that after this second dot, then I can just come down here and add a dot catch. Okay, so I'll add the dot catch, open that up, and of course I need to get rid of this semicolon here because that's not where I'm ending things. So I'll do a dot catch here, and first off, let me just do a console.log of my error message. So I'll do a console.log, and I'll say, oh, so this dot catch is going to have a parameter of error. So I'll just say error, err, like that. So here I'll then log my err, dot message. All right, so now that we've been able to, execute this dot catch part, let's go ahead and, tweak the URL again. So I'll just add t here just to, spoil it, and then I'll save. And let me refresh this page and inspect. So I'll refresh, then I'll do Ctrl+Shift+I. Then I would come here and search for just anywhere Abuja, and then I'll hit enter. Let's see what happens. Great. So you see, we get this failed to fetch data, which is the error message we threw. So instead of the whole application to crash, we're able to handle the error. But you see, in this place now, you see this our loading. It's still loading. So it's going to show this loading forever. So we're going to need to do something about that too. So I'll minimize this guy, and let's come here and sort the loading problem out. So where are we? Great. So when you catch the error, when it has gotten to this point, then we know that there is an error bar. So there are some things we'll do. First off, we're going to set error to true. Okay. Then we're going to set the error message, which was empty initially. Error message is going to now be this error.message. Then last but not the least, we're going to set the loading state. So I'll say set is loading to false. So we don't want it to load forever. We'll set it to false. Now, but it's not what we're doing here now is not complete. We need to actually display that error on the page. So we're going to scroll down here, this error. We're going to give this error, this P, we're going to give it a class name. So I'll come here and say class name, and I'll say that if the error message, so it needs to be curly braces because we want to add some logic there. I'll say that if the error message msg is not equal to an empty string, then I want it to have a class. So in other words, if the error message has content in it, let me explain what's going on here. See, initially when we created this error message, where is it to error message? We set it to an empty string. It's only when we now had an error in this catch block that we now set the error message to whatever the error message is, which is this guy here. So here now I'm saying that if the error message is not equal to an empty string, in other words, if there is an error message, then I want this paragraph to have a class name of error. So error, okay. Else I just want it to be empty. Now, what's this error class we're talking about? Remember when we were writing our CSS, we wrote one class dot error. So basically we are just giving it a background. So this background of red, that's what we are giving it here. So I'll come here and let's save this guy. Okay, and hopefully we should be able to refresh this page. Oh, sorry, we've not corrected. Oh, okay, it's even okay if we can leave the error. This T here, it's an error we introduced. We can leave it there. Let's just test out. So I'll say Abuja and I'll hit enter, and you can see we now have failed to fetch data, which is that error class that we've added, and you see the red background. Great. So let me get rid of this T and let's save. Okay, let me search for something else. So I think I should probably refresh the page first. excuse me. So I'll search for London and I'll hit enter and we have London. Let's search for Abuja. Hit enter, you see we have loading and then we have Abuja. Let's search for an empty field. See, we have an error message, input cannot be empty. Now let's search for something else. So let's say London again. Those are the only names coming to my head. And you see the error message disappears and now we have the London. So I think at this point we are kind of done with the project because we've covered all the possible angles that can happen. The only thing we need to do left is to set this date. Okay, so let's set the date. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another state. Excuse me. So then I'll call this state, what did I call the state actually? Date today. So I'll say date today, and I'll set this also to set date today, and I'm going to set it to okay, I'll just leave it empty first. Now above this state, I'm going to create a variable. So I'll say let today be equal to new date. Going to be very fast with this one. So new date, then I'll say date is equal to, no, I'll say let date, excuse me, let date be equal to today. So I'll just get the year, get the month, and get the date. So I'll say today dot get full year. Option is already coming up here. Let me press this out, and I'm going to just concatenate it with a hyphen like this, and then I'll say I'll concatenate it again with today. So that will be today dot get month, like so. And then let's just add these guys again, paste that in, and then I'll then say today dot get date, like so, and then I'll close it. Okay, now I'll then set this date today to the date, this date I just created, this guy here. So instead of having this dummy date here, I'll just come here and then I'll just set the date today, like so. So date today, which is the state, and save, and we should have today's date. Okay, so something is wrong. Oh, okay, we have the date. So 2021 11/25. Oh, okay, so for the get month, right, you need to add +1. That's why I got 11. So let me just go to the get month. So this get month, it will be get month. You put everything inside a bracket like this, because the month is going to start from 0. So put everything inside a bracket, and oh sorry, Control Z, and then you see +1. That's what the problem was. So save that, and what do we have? Excuse me. Okay, let me refresh the page. So you see we have 2021 12, and today's date is 25th of December. So that's basically it, right? You can actually do a lot. You can get more specific and write maybe 25th December 2021 and even get the day, but I just wanted to keep things simple when it came to the date and focus on the weather app itself. So one more time, let's go ahead and test the weather app. So I'll say Abuja hit enter, and you see that. Let me type something that cannot be fetched. See, failed to fetch data. Great. So I really hope that you learned something from this one, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next project. Alright, but before we go to the next project, I realized that there is a typographical error somewhere because my temperature is reading 297 degrees Celsius. So I actually knew where it was immediately. So it's units, this fetch URL. You know, we had a unit value here, unit equals metrics, so S. So it's actually units equals metric. There's no S there. So if you go ahead and save, and you see here we have 297. So if you go ahead and save and you search for Abuja one more time, hit enter, you see now that it's 24 degrees Celsius, and that's actually the only thing we need to change. All right, so thank you so much. I'll see you in the next project.